Welcome, everyone, to Lone Star Spirit. We are continuing with our look at Texas Gulf Coast tropical storms and hurricanes. And in this episode, we're going to go all the way back to 1961. But before I get into that, there are a couple of things that I do want to mention before we get into Hurricane Carla. That is, first off, I want to congratulate the Texas Longhorns fast pitch softball team for their amazing come from behind victories in the 3-game series with Texas A&M, which allows them to go ahead and get into the College Softball World Series. I could not be more proud of those girls. It was 3 games, nail biters. I was dadgum near. If I had hair, I probably would have pulled it out a couple of times. But just congratulations, way to stay in the game, way to fight. And I want you girls to take the entire thing. I want y'all to win this thing. Definitely take out Stanford this coming weekend and go on and let's keep Oklahoma from winning their 4th straight. That's all I got to say on that. Number 2, big thing that happened also this weekend. As many of you know, I am a huge wrestling fan, and you can tell I'm wearing my, even though it's kind of outdated, Better Than You Bebe shirt, but Maxwell Jacob Friedman made his return to AEW at Double or Nothing this weekend. And I couldn't be, again, more excited about that. We have missed you, MJF, and I am glad that you're back. Now, moving on to today's topic. This is going to be another episode in our continuing series on Texas Gulf Coast hurricanes, and we're going to be looking at Hurricane Carla from 1961. Now, I can remember my mother telling me stories about Hurricane Carla and how devastating it was, how bad it was, and I'm not going to do any good justice trying to relay those stories that she told me. It's been a long time since I've heard a lot of those stories, but we're going to just look at a lot of the facts that have come up with and been released with Hurricane Carla. We're going to have some great photos and everything like that. One little interesting tidbit is a little-known reporter at the time was one of the very first journalists to actually broadcast live during a hurricane, and that is the one and only Dan Rather. He was working for KHOU, Channel 11 in Houston when Hurricane Carla hit, and it pretty much propelled him to stardom with the CBS network, and that's just something that I thought was very interesting with that. So let's go ahead and get into Hurricane Carla. A lot of the information, or most of the information that I'm going to be sharing with you today, comes from the National Weather Service and the National Hurricane Center that has a wealth of information, and you can go there. It's on the web. I'll leave links to those in the description and towards the end of the video where you can actually have an address to go and look at those, that information on just about every hurricane that's hit the Texas coast, and pretty much any hurricane that has hit North America for that matter. But let's go ahead and get into Hurricane Carla. Like I said earlier, a lot of the information is going to be coming from the National Weather Service and the National Hurricane Center. A lot of this information is just, I may quote a little bit of it, but I'm going to paraphrase a lot of what the summary is on Hurricane Carla. And we're going to stop a couple of times throughout the video to discuss some of the things that accompany these hurricanes, especially when we're talking about the chances for tornadoes. And a lot of people that I've talked to in the past really don't understand or didn't grasp that hurricanes can actually produce tornadoes. And that's just an added danger that is associated with hurricanes, no matter if it's a Category 1 tropical storm or if it's a Category 5. You always have that chance of tornadoes being spawned with the supercells that are located within the circulation of these hurricanes and tropical storms. So Carla developed, of course, in the southwestern Caribbean Sea somewhere around September 3rd. And of course, it was a tropical depression. Kind of moved real slow, and it strengthened very slowly, and it was on a northwesterly track. Now, Carla was upgraded to a hurricane on September 6th and then moved northward toward the Yucatan Channel and the Yucatan Peninsula. Carla moved through the Yucatan Channel during the day on September 7th and entered the Gulf of Mexico later that afternoon and became a major hurricane by that evening. And you can see by the picture that I've got posted right next to me how incredibly large Hurricane Carla actually was. It pretty much took up the entire Gulf of Mexico. Now, Carla continued to intensify and grow in size inside of the Gulf of Mexico. And again, everybody in Texas pretty much knows that August is typically the hottest month of the summer. And when you go into September, there's really not much of a change. The humidity is still there, the heat is still there, and you've got very warm waters in the Gulf of Mexico. Carla continued to intensify, and by the early morning hours of September 11th, it reached a max peak of 145 mile an hour winds with a minimum central pressure of 927 millibars. Hurricane Carla made landfall as a Category 4 storm near Port O'Connor, Texas, around 2 p.m. with an intensity of 145 mile an hour winds and a central pressure of 931 millibars. Now, I do have a graphic that I'm going to show here that shows a direct correlation between how low the millibars are. So we're looking at 927 millibars, that there is a direct correlation between the millibar depth, more or less, and wind speed. And you can see here that at its highest wind speed, the millibars on this graphic are at their lowest. So it's very important that when we're getting our information from our meteorologists and whether it be the Weather Channel, your local news, Weather Nation, if you're getting it on YouTube or Rumble or wherever you get your weather news from, that you pay very close attention to what the strength is in the millibars. And then just if you see very low millibars, you can pretty much safely assume that you're going to have very high winds. So once it actually hit the area that between Port O'Connor and Port Lavaca, and I'm also going to bring up a graphic. Brain stopped for a second. I'm going to bring up a graphic that shows, if you look very closely, there's another community, we'll call it, that has been in one of the previous videos in this series, and that is Indianola. It's very, very close to Indianola, and this is just the eye of Hurricane Carla. So you can see that eye was very close to Indianola. You could probably say that the eye went over Indianola. So that would be the third historical hurricane that has hit this area that we have covered here on this channel. Once Carla made landfall, it slowly weakened while heading inland across central Texas, but it was still a minimal hurricane southeast of Austin early on the 12th and weakening to a tropical storm by the time it reached Fort Worth. So this hurricane actually packed quite a punch. And in some of my research, I read several different sources that stated that Hurricane Carla was actually a Category 5 hurricane upon landfall, but then it was reevaluated several years later and determined to be a Category 4. Carla is considered one of the largest major Gulf hurricanes in the 20th century. Unfortunately, 43 people lost their lives, and approximately half of those that lost their life were attributed to tornadoes and floods accompanying the hurricane, and property damage estimated over $300 million. Now, that's 1961 money. I did a little bit of a comparison. In 2024, that's over $4 billion that Hurricane Carla caused. And this is just the inflation. If that doesn't tell you where inflation's going, I don't know what does. But if a hurricane like Carla was to hit the Texas Gulf Coast now, we're probably looking 10, 12, 14 billion dollars in property damage, if not much, much more. Life loss was held to a minimum by prompt evacuations. Now, I'm sure that people that had been in the area had hopefully learned from storms like the 1900 Galveston hurricane and hurricanes that happened between 1900 and 1961 to, you know what, this is a hurricane, this is a bad one, let's get out of here and just get somewhere where it's higher. We may run into some storms and things like that, but we're not going to be subject to the insane high winds of 145 miles an hour and the potential for tornadoes that could increase wind speeds up to 300 miles per hour. Now, the storm surge that was associated with Carla caused a lot of damage, and it actually pretty much destroyed Highway 87 that goes along the coast. Structures along the beach that were not elevated high enough were pretty much destroyed. Sabine Pass was inundated with storm surge and flooded portions of Port Arthur, Texas. Now, we talked a little bit about the wind and pressure. And just to kind of go back and kind of piggyback on that a little bit, the highest winds associated with Carla were along the Texas Gulf Coast, where hurricane-force wind gusts observed from Port Mansfield to Galveston. The U.S. Weather Bureau at the Jefferson County Airport recorded the highest sustained winds of 149 miles per hour and a peak wind gust of 169 miles an hour. The U.S. Weather Bureau at Lake Charles reported highest sustained winds of 44 miles per hour and peak wind gust of 55 miles an hour. So that's a lot of wind going on right there. And even a 44 mile an hour wind has the capacity to knock people off their feet. So that's very important that we monitor our wind pressure, our wind and pressure. Remember, there is a direct correlation between the millibars of pressure and higher wind speeds. The storm surge, going back to the storm surge, being a very large hurricane, high storm surge values were observed along the Texas and Louisiana coast. The Louisiana U.S. Weather Bureau stations and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers show storm surge exceeded 10 feet above normal levels along the Texas coast from Sabine to Aransas Pass. Highest tide reported was 18.5 feet at Port Lavaca. Other locations experienced high tides were Matagorda with 12.6 feet, Aransas Pass at 10.9 feet, Galveston at 10 feet, Sabine Pass had 8.8 feet, and Port Arthur had 7.8. Along the Louisiana coast, so they also had it. They had places that were 7, 8, sometimes 10 feet associated with Hurricane Carla. Now, rainfall with Carla, and I've also got a graphic that I'll show you here as well. The rainfall of 10 to 15 inches were common across central Texas, the central Texas coast between Corpus Christi and Galveston and further inland. Across southeast Texas, central and southern Louisiana, significantly less rainfall occurred, ranging from 1 to 9 inches. And you can see on the graphic here that there is a lot of rain that fell with Carla here. And you can see that you're looking at 10, sometimes 15 feet. And in this graphic, it shows that the maximum rain associated that was recorded was 17, almost 17 and a half inches of rain right there in Bay City. So again, hurricanes are like, for lack of a better term, the perfect storm. They are perfectly designed and built to cause the most destruction possible. You've got the rain, the floods, the high winds, potential for tornadoes, storm surge. It's the total package of storms. So again, we've got to be very careful when it comes to these hurricanes. Now, when it comes to things like tornadoes, a lot, and like I said at the beginning, a lot of people do not put a whole lot of thought, or maybe they're more worried about the storm surge and the rain and the high winds, straight line winds that are associated with these powerful hurricanes. But tornadoes are an added danger that everyone needs to be very much aware of and take into consideration when they decide if they're going to leave or not. So here with the tornadoes associated with Hurricane Carla, one of the largest and deadliest tornado outbreaks occurred within the large circulation of Hurricane Carla. Numerous tornadoes were within the rain bands to the north and east of the eye across East Texas and Louisiana from September 10th through the 13th. And if you remember from the last episode that I did, we talked a little bit about the wet side and the dirty side. And that dirty side, which is going to be on that upper right quadrant, that's where a lot of the tornadoes are going to be at. And if you were to look at Carla, that's going to be right where that area was. Across Louisiana, most of the tornadoes occurred from the afternoon of September 10th into the morning of September 12th. First tornado reported in Kaplan in northern Vermilion Parish at 4:50 p.m. Central Standard Time, September 10th, and this was one of 2 F3 tornadoes reported in Louisiana. So you've got anywhere from F1 to F3 tornadoes that are happening in Louisiana. Now, across southeast Texas, most of the tornadoes reported range from F2 to F4 in intensity. And to kind of borrow a line from one of my favorite movies, Twister, an F4 will move your house quite effectively, efficiently, and it won't tornadoes don't care if you're there or not. They're there to destroy. So F2 to F4 in intensity from the afternoon of September 11th into the morning hours of September 12th. The morning and afternoon leading up to Carla's landfall on September 11th, an F2 tornado was reported at Bay City in Matagorda County around 11:47 a.m. Central Standard Time. An F3 tornado occurred near Jacksonville in Cherokee County around 1:20 p.m. Central Standard Time with 3 injuries. Another F3 tornado occurred in Harris County near Channelview in the eastern Houston metro area around 5:50 p.m. Central Standard Time, injuring 22 people. Early on September 12th, an F4 tornado occurred in Galveston around 3:15 a.m. Central Standard Time. Now, I know it's a hurricane, but we've got some people out there that think they're 10 feet tall and bulletproof. They may have been in their beds, not really paying attention to what was going on. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm lucky if I can make it past 12:30 at night. But that, with hurricanes, thunderstorms, supercells, tornadic activity, you've got to be on your guard 24 hours a day when these storms are in your area. Now, this F4 tornado that hit Galveston stands as the strongest and deadliest tropical cyclone tornado ever recorded in Texas, with 8 deaths and around 200 injuries. Another F3 tornado struck Galveston later that morning at 6 a.m., but no additional injuries were reported. Still, another F3 tornado occurred around 7:30 a.m. in Liberty County in the town of Hardin. The next day, September 13th, an F2 tornado occurred at 5:05 p.m. across Panola County near the town of Panola. So with these hurricanes, like I said, they're just the perfect storm when it comes to really just being super destructive and not caring whether you're there or not. They are there to destroy. So we're going to take just one last quick look at the track of Carla as she made landfall. So you can see here, I've got a rather large picture of just the region there, and you can see in the upper right hand corner, Lake Jackson, Freeport, Sweeney, Van Vleck, Bay City, and we're going kind of in a south, I guess that'd be a southwesterly direction. This is a south-southwest right there. And you can see you've got Port Lavaca, Magnolia Beach, Indianola, and Port O'Connor. So just right through Matagorda Bay, between Port O'Connor and Port Lavaca, and right in the center of that is Indianola. And let's see here. We've got another one here. It's a little bit closer. It's very close to Victoria. It's not far from the Aransas National Wildlife Refuge. It's right there on Matagorda Bay where this thing hit. So right here, this is the one I was looking for here. So we've got Carla, 1961, right over Port Lavaca, and you can see just kind of catty corner from the 61, the 1 in 61 there's Indianola. So Indianola has played a role in a few of these hurricanes that have come through on the Texas Gulf Coast, especially in that more central, less upper portion of the Texas Gulf Coast. But this was an amazing storm, and I invite you to go and do a little bit more research. Go to the National Hurricane Center's website, go to the National Weather Service website, and look at these hurricanes that have hit the Texas Gulf Coast. There are a lot of them, and we're not going to cover all of them. The next one we're going to do, and actually we're going to kind of wrap up the series with the one that happened most recently, of course, That is Hurricane Harvey. And I'm sure that if you've been in the Texas Gulf Coast for any length of time over the past 10 years or so, or even less than that, say 5 years, you've heard all kinds of stories associated with Hurricane Harvey. One last thing before I wrap up today's video. The start of hurricane season is coming up this week. And again, I implore you to take those steps to make sure that you have what you need. Go get a hurricane evacuation checklist, get a tracking map, do it on your computer. I'm going to get one that's paper, so if we do start having those hurricanes that come into the Gulf of Mexico or into the Western Caribbean, I'm going to start tracking them myself. But do everything you can within your power to keep yourself and, of course, your family safe when these storms start spinning up, because not only is the National Hurricane Center saying this is going to be a very wild and active hurricane season, the Texas Almanac has also stated that we're actually overdue for a Category 3 or higher hurricane this year. So everyone stay on your toes. Be sure you're doing everything you need to do to make sure that you are safe. And of course, I've got the information for the National Hurricane Center and the National Weather Service websites there on the other side of the screen. So everyone, thanks for watching. Keep your eyes open, be vigilant now that we're on the very beginning of hurricane season. So until next time, I'm Charles. This is Lone Star Spirit. Have a great week, everyone.